them to do an internship with Toyota. We want them to pay for the internship. We want them to have a mentor, etc. And we established a relationship with Toyota Corporation, initially for $500,000, where they would pay for students. Well, they started with six students they would pay for their full degree for the 4 years. They would earn the degree, the bachelor's degree at Kentucky State University, and they would finish with a master's from the University of Kentucky. All paid by Toyota with free internship, paid internship, and mentorship. This is the kind of relationship that we're talking about here. Think about businesses that are in our own backyard that we can do this kind of relationship. And 4, there's a great opportunity to explore more effective ways of delivering post-secondary education. So competency-based education, for example. Students graduating with the skills that employers need. So it challenges, in many cases, the traditional model. So versus on seat model, 16 weeks, you're based at the point that you master the content, you move forward. Obviously, that has accreditation challenges, and some accrediting agencies are no better with content than others. Okay. And then 5, over the past several decades, the gap in education attainment level between highest income and lowest income. We believe that we have to disaggregate the data, as you heard Johnny talk about, particularly for low-income and first-generation students, many of whom are students of color. Right? So let me just share with you what we're doing to work with MSI on this particular effort. Very excited that this year we developed a project that is around $2 million over a 3-year period to work with 6 institutions to help them plan or to support the development of tools, like the tools that we talked about here, and practices that would help more students stay on track to graduation, but also to help students more successfully navigate rewarding careers. So each institution is receiving $325,000 over 3 years, $50,000 to plan it. We're providing a data coach to each institution, not out of the 325, it's paid by university funds. Third-party evaluator, also not paid by the institution. Innovation group, so each institution has developed a group that included chief academic officer, an employer partner, member of the faculty, and the third person is an institutional research representative. Why do we include faculty? Because of all the portfolios that I mentioned that we fund, the number one challenge of all grantees, whenever we do an assessment, is getting faculty to support or believe this particular project. Or it's not necessarily the faculty member's fault, the failure of the administration to engage the faculty in the development of those initiatives, etc. Which is why we have decided that every single project we fund must include faculty. So we'll be making decisions or announcements regarding those institutions over the next week or two. So if you'd like more information, feel free to log on to our website. We actually have a website dedicated to College Value, collegevalue.net. It is all the information about what we talked about here. So questions to think about. How might the Southern University system develop an initiative around College Value? It's not a rhetorical question.
What if we got to do from that?
Well, the question is, how might your institution develop an initiative around College Value? Because we, at USC Funds, are looking for a consortium of institutions to fund. Yes, ma'am.
We have a strong alumni base, so we can start by asking some questions that you would so long and start determining our ROI with some universities.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if your statistics earlier, including data on students who may have been underprepared for college, because that's a key, and I was surprised that you didn't know that.
It does. It's a representative sample.
And, you know, there's always going to be outliers. Students who can go to any school on the campuses, but the hallmark of the HBCU has been students who are underserved, unprepared. We embrace those, take those students from where they are and bring them to where they need to be.
That's a really good point. So the next phase of the project will include disaggregated data by socioeconomic status, preparation level, etc. Which is why we want to have a larger sample of 120,000 versus 55,000. Yes, ma'am.
To answer your question, we could develop a system-wide strategic plan around college data.
Are you taking notes? That's my staff. Okay. Yes, sir.
In terms of campaigns, we would need to have an ongoing campaign year-round to recruit not only the faculty and staff, but also when we have our students come in as freshmen, we want to have those mentors and mentee programs that follow those students to assess from freshman year to senior year, and also post-graduation with the Alumni Association. So you want a well-rounded campaign that starts from the student's freshman year throughout their college experience and post-graduate experience. So this will have to be an ongoing campaign that the university sets in place to make sure that we gauge the college value of our students. And when those students are not getting that big value, what do we do as an institution to help them maintain the value?
I need to move to this side now, because right here.
My name is Larry Henry, and I'm from Baton Rouge campus. One of the things I think we could do is, for the different disciplines, develop an advisory committee from the community, committee that involves industry, and also the other people, the companies and so on, and ask them what their projection is for the next 5 years, I think. And then take that input and tailor our programs essentially to match those needs. And I think by doing that, if we could do that, we could impact the students' learning activities, courses, and so on, to help essentially develop a pipeline based on what the projected needs are going to be.
Second question, how might HBCUs use their own institutional data about the success of their graduates as a marketing tool? That'd be helpful, would you say?
Yeah.
Gotta have the data first? Yes, sir. Here, then up here.
I think we should begin from the beginning. If we really wish to add value to the college degree, I would propose that each department review the curriculum. Does it address the market needs? What is it there before we go outside? That should be the first step if you really wish to add the value to the degree. Thank you.
And the final question I would ask you, what is missing from the college value agenda here? We don't believe we have all the answers, but we're certainly open to any recommendations we have, how we might pursue this, how we might be able to assist students to like Southern University system. Any discussion on that? Yes, sir.
It seems that one of the problems we have. It seems that one of the problems we have is that we have not addressed the students here. Why don't we have students helping the institution to talk to other students about the value, college value, HBCUs, and initiatives?
You're saying we did not include students in the survey currently?
There are no students here, how, number one, number two, number three. It seems as if the student should be the most important persons.
So this,
They become the ambassador to the university.
right, but in this particular case, those individuals surveyed are former students, they're graduates. And we wanted to know what they thought about their experience. So we couldn't include the students in this particular survey because we wanted these are people who earned the degree to actually tell us about their experience and how it has impacted their engagement.
I would agree, we could, do a lot of things by developing a common shared narrative that is known by all members, staff, faculty, administrators, and all of the campuses within the institution. One of the things that I find hurts us more than anything else is the way in which we are often misrepresented in the wider community. Oftentimes not as an analysis, but simply because the good news is not getting out. So I would say begin the narrative within the institution itself.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Brown, Dr. Young.
Within the Southern system, I would love to see all of the campuses come together as a family to serve our students and show Louisiana, the nation and the world, that we are not just a system with individual campuses in their own silos, but first and foremost, we value each other as a family within one system.
I know one of the challenges with doing the ROI data, in terms of the quantitative data, you have to have state level longitudinal data. I don't know if Louisiana is the state that has it in terms of wages over a period of time. I know several states in which we're working now that are, or that do have the data, but I'm not sure Louisiana is. It does? Great. Okay. Well, this concludes my presentation, and if you'd like information on the report, this PowerPoint will be back to Dr. Brown. Thank you so much.
Good job, good job. Thank you, Dr. Essie. Let's give her one more round of applause. This is lunchtime. I have two requests. One, please make sure that you're keeping up with your conference evaluation form. We certainly need these forms. Many of you do program work, project work, and you know that this was extramurally funded, not general funds. And so we want to be able to document the impact and the quality of the program. Second, some individuals have asked about checkout. We have provided additional time for you. But if you want to seize this opportunity to check out before lunch, certainly go ahead and do that. I don't see Dr. Ricard, but I'm assuming that lunch is prepared in addition to bringing in 2 more rows of table space. So please take this time, enjoy your break, and we will be reconvening at approximately 12:10 for the lunch session, where we have an excellent presidential presentation. So please, it's right out of this door. Okay, right out of the door. Thank you so much for your attention this first half of the day, and we are almost at conclusion. See you in approximately 15 minutes. 15 minutes. floor?
Yes.
Yeah, turn this off, she's gonna talk.
All right, cool. I'll turn it off. Give me 1 second.
Take that first one, then we have to sign.
You need me to leave this for you? They're gonna put a table in here?
We'll put the copy on there.
You can leave this chair. You can leave this chair.
first consultants join us this afternoon. Dr. Dorothy Yancey has served as the president, I know mostly from Johnson C. Smith, but she just shook up the world with her laptop program years ago. And then served 2 terms at Shaw University, once as the 14th and then later as the 16th president. As a former board member of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges, I must say that Dr. Yancey did yeoman's work, especially at Shaw. When Shaw was on the brink of fiscal collapse, she came in and refinanced in excess of $30 million of debt, raised their positive CFI index score, and brought in the largest freshman class in that institution's history, led it to successful reaffirmation at the time in the nation thought that Shaw might be moving out of existence. During her time at Johnson C. Smith, she raised just shy of $150 million in capital investment and tripled the institutional endowment during her time from $15 million to $53 million. Most recently, she and some colleagues have founded TM2 Education Search Consulting, a presidential and executive search firm, and she is just phenomenal. Much like Johnny Taylor, she's going to tell the truth. As my late grandmother would say, she'll give it to you raw, and you can cook it at your leisure. So please feel free to welcome Dr. Dorothy Townsend. Yes.
Good afternoon. I don't know you can't rush, but I want you to wake up. I'm here to speak with here. I talked to one of my colleagues who had retired as president and has now gone to the SAS as vice president. He told me to cut me and tell you the damn truth. That's how I put it. I like to say hello to all my pseudo friends. We work all this and what 2 different times. Yes, and we had good time doing. I also have to remind you that Johnny Teller is one of my children. I mentioned Johnny. I met at the airport one day, and I knew who he was. He worked in corporate, making lots of money. And I convinced him to come and teach at Johnson C. Smith at night for free. Oh, the hell of a professor. He's really good. I said it was free, it was even better. And then he would come over all weekend sometimes and sit on the floor so I could give him the extra life and tell him what he needed to do in life. So his introduction to Black colleges with Johnson C. Smith, we trained with us. You see that? He's awesome. I also remember Lorenzo from Kentucky State. I remember being on the USA Funding grant I had, and I knew he was going to move on and do great things. But this morning, I have to thank Dr. Brown for inviting me. I don't know if I should say it or not, because I had worried about this presentation for some time. I have an old history and political science professor, and I believe that I'm going to be able to talk to you. I need to get myself prepared. And I decided I was not going to do any PowerPoint. I was going to tell you what I need to tell you. Now, good decisions. Let's get our mindset now. Good decisions require good data. Why HBCUs succeed and fail. Around 500 BC, Ephesius Tertullus, a Greek philosopher, said, there is nothing permanent except change. Nothing can endure with change. Change can be a wish spelled with P. Charles Darwin stated, in fact, Charles Darwin stated, it is not the strongest of the species that survive, not the most intelligent that survive. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. Most of us don't want to change. If I went back to the classroom today, I'd get a hell of a fix because I have to go all over again, all of my, what I call a wonderful lecture. I have to reinvent myself. And unfortunately, that's what we learn. HBCUs have entered a new normal. A new normal requiring assessment of student learning outcomes, relevancy in terms of whether or not we should exist, or do we bring it into the table, and accountability for the federal and state tax dollars that we receive for the students' return on investment. HBCUs are facing financial hardships, federal government policy changes, Madam President, almost killed most of us, the changes in Pell, austerity measures by states regarding state aid, grant for donors who have to decide who they're going to give their money to, private institutions closing, as I say, Paul's follow sword, St. Paul's College, Barnes Scotia in North Carolina, and Kane in North Carolina, and Augusta is on the brink of failure. These are just a few issues. However, the more obvious are data-driven accountability measures, such as performance-based funding. We saw with Florida A&M, HBC, made news on April 3rd, where they received more than $25 million in additional appropriations as a result of the school's 13-point increase in the state's performance-based funding model. Many states are moving to performance-based funding models. We have enrollment issues. Some enrollments are falling flat, some are down. Some are rising slightly. Jackson State, for example, has increased in its competing with university research. We have students wearing out costs that we can't keep up with. Failure to invest in our infrastructure. Our campuses don't look like other campuses. New and relevant academic programs, the quality of student life, engagement, and data-driven accountability. Some of these accountability issues, unfortunately, are being pushed by the federal government. And when they were being pushed, I don't know, I guess I can say this in this room, so we're all friends. Most of us, we want to set up and say anything to our president. We have state government pushing issues. Nobody has been down banging on their doors. And the general public is demanding change and an understanding of what I used to be on. Now, there are trends and accountability that we have to pay attention to whether we like it or not. We have to pay attention to retention rates. That's right. I know you heard it so long, sort of what cast over your head. Say, you know, that's right. They keep talking about that. They keep talking about that. But every year, next year, we keep talking about graduation rates. We keep talking about we can't do this and we can't do that. The point is, we got to show progress. We have default rates. We don't have anything to do about them borrowing money on us. We're responsible for what? Them paying back. The return on investment. How much money are they going to make in lifetime? And then they have blessed CFI score that most boards have never heard of until recently. What does your financial liability score look like? And then the federal government started publishing it every year, right? They started publishing around 2012. That government has invested in 1.5, you're laid out. Now, all of these accountability metrics require data. I mean good data. We can't make it up. You know what I said? We can't make it up. Some people don't look good in ours. Or slacks. It has to be collected daily, not just 2 years before SACS comes. You know what I'm talking about. And the president leaves, and another one comes in who doesn't know what they're talking about. Now, Section 4 in the SACS requirements is the federal government requirements. The federal government put this in there because they wanted to keep up with what we do. The institution evaluates success with respect to student achievement and physical position. Criteria may include enrollment data, retention, graduation, course completion, and job placement rates, state licensing examinations, student portfolios, or other means of demonstrating how you achieve these goals. Just to show how serious it is, the SACS handbook for reviewers indicates that in core requirement 2.5, a student must show a pattern of evidence. We're into the culture of evidence. You must show a pattern of evidence that can demonstrate strategic planning. And I'm going to tell you about the strategic plan. When I got my first presidency, I looked at the strategic plan, and the fact said, we don't have a plan. I said, you do, so like this. They said, well, give us a copy. So I got the sheriff. This was the president of the day. They didn't get our plan. And the next comes here, we gonna tell them we ain't got no. I said, oh, so we sat down. I called IBM, because they had the education division in those days. They came and we worked and we created a strategic plan. That's why my hands off, you know, they take that seriously. Then we have resource allocations based on the plan. We didn't connect the budget to the plan. We didn't do the budget and we plan. The budget was the same as the dollar was, but we had no money. We have public accountability reports that they look at. We have systematic, mission-driven, institutional-wide evaluations, and the use of results for continuous planning. The results that we collect have to be used for decision making. The loop has to be closed. We have to have, not just collecting the data. You don't go out and you go practice, so once I graduate, I go and you look back to the job. And are you qualified for it? You better figure out how to use that data for this good day. That's right. Use the data. Now, they also suggest very clearly what indicators you should be looking at. They look at trend data, survey data, benchmark data, we can all argue with data. The point is, he has the data, so you better get some. Student satisfaction indices, national norms of student learning outcome results, major field test scores. I don't forget the first time I saw some field test scores for one of my institutions, I won't call it name. They were so low, I didn't sign the paper. They didn't fill out the form right. You shouldn't make those scores. When you look at their score compared to others, then I figured out, well, we'll take this limit and make them out of it. So we're going to move from this point forward. So this is very important. Then the licensing certificates. I've seen presidents lose their jobs because they failed the nursing test. That's been a popular one in North Carolina. And it was popular in Virginia too. I think we had a lot more here. The fact of the matter is that scores have to be made. I got an email from my little niece this morning. She was shouting to Jesus because she had passed the practice exam. She's been teaching now for 25 years. I don't know what she pulled. Keep doing that. Because you know, in some cases you can't keep doing that when you don't pass the practice. What do you do? What do your peers say to you? They're supposed to be fine. Now, the thing about this data is to be real touchy. And I say you can't make it up. It's got to be reliable. In other words, can it be consistent and interpreted? I replicate your data. Oh, when I try to replicate this, something else come up with you made it up. It's got to be current. It can't be what happened 10 years ago. It's got to be verifiable. Can you verify this? It's got to be coherent. It's got to make some sense. That all you try to get some people that run institutions who can put something together, but nobody can understand it except them, and they try to explain, but this is statistics, like how we can capture it. So it's got to be orderly so we all understand it. It's got to be objective, it's got to be relevant, and it's got to be representative. This means then, it is not enough for us to just say, that's who's getting jobs, they get jobs. We have to prove that they do. We have to document retention, progression, and graduation, and not just say, we are doing a good job. Now, further, the administration in Washington, and I just refer to them that way, they want to link federal aid to a set of college ratings. You know what I'm saying now? They want to link college aid to a set of ratings, the college scoreboard, 210. Which includes default rates, might not be responsible, but there you go. Retention and graduation rates and return on investment. Now, to show this level of confusion among some college administrators, and there's somebody in this room who was where I was last week, I heard a new president say out loud, he said in a public place, it was tired of talking about retention and graduation rates. He said, that was an old hat. I'm trying to get them to know, you put that title. He said the HBCU should be concentrating on purpose, technical feasibility, and financial sustainability. That's where that goes from. So the point is, we shouldn't be thinking about what he was talking about, but we have to keep our eyes on the prize of retention and graduation rates. We can't get diverted. Yet these key outcomes that measure retention, graduation rate, and average net price students pay to attend the medium debt to loan students care are not on the scorecard. And they actually put it on the internet. And it's coming straight from the horse's mouth, the Department of Education. So the problem you said correct. And they want to, as I said before, tie accreditation status to evidence of institutional performance, not purpose, not mission, not convenience and safety. Folks, this is no April joke. To show that the Department of Education is serious, on April 2nd, 2016, this is last month, a letter was sent to all regional accreditors, again emphasizing the variable was to be considered that measured student performance and learning outcomes. Specifically on page 5 of the 11 page listed, the Department of Education states the following. Regional accreditors tend to use qualitative measures of student achievement and tend not to have numerical measures. We encourage them to consider adding objective measures, such as retention, graduation, and cohort rates that need to be utilized if they are already. In addition, because applied professional and occupational programs focus on employment as a primary goal, a regional accrediting agency will not consider licensing and placement grades in its initial or continuing accreditation institutions that offer such programs. Which you don't consider, they say you may be a failure. And you may not be ensuring that the educational training offered by that institution is sufficient. In other words, we will take your right to give out applications. They want numbers, they want numerics. Now to our real problem. For years as a people, we have come from the oral tradition. We have measured progress by emotions and anecdotal stories. I give you one for example. My family has had a family reunion since 1883. We don't send out invitations. Everybody knows when to come. It's passed down by word of mouth through generations. It's the Saturday before the first Sunday in May. And it's at the same site where they bought the first church where they put X's on the deed. So that if you don't know how to show up on the right day, and there's some people who come on the wrong day, they come the next Sunday. Because Saturday can actually become the Saturday before Saturday. But it's the Saturday before the first Sunday in May. If you come the wrong time, they talk about your side of the family, how they cannot interrupt. Because the wrong time, your family did not teach you how to interpret things. Now, we believe as a people, and I know you don't want to talk about this, that the people who have come from much to nothing, we believe in giving opportunities to those that need. We believe that living diamonds in the rough. We take a piece of coal and we make a diamond out of it. Many of us have family history that are married from people who were given an opportunity at our HBCU. And we have become successful contributing citizens. They were those who were bad and didn't make it. But we concluded that they just failed and missed an opportunity. I'll give you some examples. The gentleman I go over here, I talk about this, he talks about himself. When he came to Shaw University with nothing, he had any money. Somebody figured out how to fix that thing in the business office. He graduated, he went to Central, he became a high-powered lawyer. You know that something got killed. He killed a lot of people in his cases. Then my predecessor at Johnson C. Smith, Bob Wright. Bob would make speeches and he would tell a story. He went to Lincoln University and they would only got a doctor, but he made about 500 on the SAT. And you know, like in those days, he made 400, and feel like a form right inside of the game. He made about 500. Then there's North Carolina, Nick. I graduated from an unaccredited high school. I was a valedictorian of a class of 17. That's right, 17. You're very few black people who I grew up like this girl out there. But I received a scholarship to Johnson C. Smith and they admitted me on probation. Now, you ever heard anything like that? And I went on and I got my doctorate like other people. Now, what I'm saying to you is, we're all first generation. The same first generation that you complain about now, you were first generation then. Now, black colleges believe in the force of will, personality, the force of drive, and determination. The motto at Clark University, my institute, my own life, I found a way of make one, or at JCSU, my other alma mater, symbols, let there be light, reflects our belief. We argue to take a way out of no way. With the new emphasis on changing admission criteria at state levels, we are about to see a mission change. Or the decrease or death of many of our HBCU institutions that the road is plummeting without some kind of radical change. Let's bring it home. Here's something University of Baton Rouge. I went online and looked at that camera. The university, I know it's professor, the university requires an ACT score of 20 if the natural is in the book for admission. Now, in this way, this may change their admission as well as deplete their enrollment unless the plan is to populate the campus with transfers to other campuses. Many of you in this room will not qualify to be admitted to Southern University now if you went at one point in time. Let's get straight. Many of you will not qualify to go today. Now, decide to take a look at the national ACT score. Inside here, the Convocation published scores for 2015 on August 26th. And these were the results. The average score for combined score was 21 for the nation. The average score for a black student was 17.1 combined. That's a hell of a way to win. The average score for a white student was 22.4, a Latino 18.9, the Asians 23.9. I stopped at that point because there was other categories. To be honest, the SAT results are about the same. I think you're looking at like a 940 or something, whereas the average African American student makes 859, went up 1 point this time. Thus, new methods adopted by Southern and many other institutions, not by Southern, it's true in North Carolina too, changes the playing field, which was never a level one in the first place. Now, what about the data on our campuses? Where is it collected and who is responsible? There are a lot of places where data is collected, and I can just mention a few. I won't be up for everybody. Because we have, before I say all this, okay, we got a lot of hard work on our campus. The Institutional Research Office, a relatively new office to us, created around 1980s, is understaffed, overworked, and underpaid. There are very few money lines located in this office that are hard money lines, and many of our institutions is funded out of Title III, as if it's not something permanent. Yet athletics, meaning the athletic director coaches are all hard lines. You got our data sometimes screwed up. Further, the data received from across the campus, and they have to beg for cheap and steal to get it. Sometimes it's flawed, but they take what they get, and then we make decisions based on what they get. Now, lots of data is collected in various offices, particularly on student affairs, admissions, and financial aid. If you look at the pay scales and the chronicle of application on most campuses, the VIP for enrollment management is one of the lowest paid vice presidents in the institution. The same is true for the directors of admission, financial aid director, and the other staff who prepare to the rest of the campus. Many of them are expected to work long hours, not 40-hour weeks, but they will be saved by the new legislation on the table that says if you pay less than $47 more than $76, you're going to get overtime. So we get ready to have a change of the pay. And this is a serious business here, it's about money. Why? Why do they have this? We also spend few funds developing the talents of people involved. We don't send them away to conferences to get them to keep up with the skill sets that they have or even learn the skill set. I have been to many USA Forum conferences. They were free. And we see one or two HBCUs present. The people in the offices didn't get information. Or the people who were the unique officers didn't approve. Now, what value can we place on recruitment of students, retention of students, and graduation completion? Very little until recently. The retention officers generally have weak strategic plans that are not connected to the main plan. They say, well, this is about 5%. Well, how you gonna do it? What's the baseline? Where's the money? What you gonna do? Who's responsible? It's usually filled, and then when you look at the retention officers, usually filled with tutors. Now we're gonna talk about somebody's mom. Tutors who failed somewhere else on campus, or have been retired from the public school for years, and they're not retired on our campuses, and they sure can't do it tutoring on campus. Now, and I said, well, everybody's so good. Let me finish. Because we have like the other day, I have a truth telling them. We have got to tell the truth, and look at ourselves, and we're going to move forward. In the past, we looked at big numbers. I remember when I first became president, only the board, how many people are you bringing in? How many freshmen come? I didn't know. I didn't know. Oh, you don't know any shot, right? And then you feel like this. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But they thought I could tell them, and if they had a good number, boy, I got a couple jobs. They never asked me how many were going out to go to graduation. How many are you graduating? Now, how many students we bring in is not a real issue of how many we send out degrees and with licenses and who pass these tests. I know several institutions who got rid of teacher education because the students weren't passing the classes. I won't call out my name, but one of them, North Carolina, I used to be the president. I didn't get rid of it. Now, how many students we bring in is important, but the jig is up on this business of retention and graduation rates. Our graduation rates are woefully low. We have to bring in students with high ACT and SAT scores, real success stories that don't spend a lot of time on, and forget about that, because Harvard wants them too. That's right. Everybody's out there trying to be the same two students. I was born in Morehouse. I can tell you that pool is shrinking. We either have to bring in success stories, or we have to come up with sustained, dedicated support systems that include intrusive advising, proactive advising, using the latest technology to get our students through gateposts. We also have to upgrade our campuses. They cannot look like ghetto. We have to upgrade our infrastructure because the students have been to visit other schools. They say, well, that doesn't look quite right. You know, they want the same thing. It's not just the food. The students, the one thing I learned from your survey, the students are not concerned about they're not concerned about your gym. They're not concerned about your football field. They don't know what does my room look like. And if they look better than the one they have at home. We also have to look at beautifying the space. I can't work for a 5-year-old room. I had my mentor every day. I went to work at Georgia Tech in 1972, and then we didn't have a bush or plant box anyway. We brought in a president from Stanford, he was an engineer, named after Mr. Mayo for the Mayo Clinic. And when he started planting flowers, the faculty acted up food. That's how they smell that food out there. So I was really enough. I was about 28 years old. I went to him and I said, why are you spending money on plants and flowers? You so gonna appreciate that. He said, Dorothy, I can't work for a $1,000 and the students have to have a pleasing and aesthetically pleasing environment to learn. And at the same time, so your facilities have to be comparable to your competitors. I took my students back to the school once, and they had the Coca-Cola machine in the place where people entertain their guests, girls, from the lounge. She said, wow, I can't go in here, it's like a cafeteria. Now, can it be done? The answer is yes. We can improve retention and graduation rates by using good data, upgrading, beautifying our campuses and other math. That requires money. So that means we're not still competing to pay off the class push. We have to model best practices, and this becomes very important. We have to model best practices. We have to hire qualified personnel and keep them developed. And they have to be student-centered, good student satisfaction in order for us to increase retention and graduation rates. Now, I'm going to give you an example of a role model that some people don't want to hear, but in my hometown, it's a sore spot. There are several institutions that serve as role models, but the most successful is Georgia State University. Georgia State University is located in Atlanta, right downtown. It holds the #1 spot in the nation for graduation and retention of African American students. Should I say #1? It conferred 1,262 degrees to African American students in 2012. The big newspaper article about it. It enrolled more African American students in the state of Georgia than all of the black colleges combined. As Trump would say, that's huge. The states and the provinces, they actually enrolled. I was so mad at the way that their website shows the program that they use for freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, and transfers to student success. Their retention and progression program has increased the graduation rate by 22% over the past 10 years, and we know that's hard to do. Over the past 10 years, they've gone up 22%. They are located downtown with a 60% non-white population. 56% pale eligible, and people say, well, we got none. 60% first generation, etc. They have a graduation rate overall of 53.4%. But the rate for the ethnic groups we break down is startling. The Latino population graduates at 66%. The black students graduate at 57%. And the white students graduate at 51%. Have you ever heard of them? Now, meanwhile, their state counterpart, Savannah State is 32%, Fort is 29%, Albany State is 38%, Kennesaw College is about 32%. Now, they use data analysis technology, and they've invested in adaptive learning software for several years, and they keep their people trained. Here at the institution, they have taken seriously, and they brag about it. The federal and state mandates and the accrediting body demands for increased retention and graduation rate. And they've been extremely successful. Many of our institutions have software to do this. I talked to several. Oh, we got that software. I said, well, who's using it? But they do not have adequately trained faculty and staff, or enough of them. There have to be enough of them to make it happen. It's like we have all had Vanderbilt and Banner for years. And our folks can operate and use the various models. We train them one time or 2 times. The one thing I learned at Jefferson System was I bought some software and I was looking to myself. I flew software cost $100,000. And then I looked at the training and I paid that. And sometimes I told me, well, you know that you multiply 10 times the cost of the software that the training will cost you one time. I said, what? Nobody told me that. He said, the people are going to come and go. He said, you're going to have some people that you can't teach nothing. You got to move them around. I had one lady who got trained 9 times to use the modules in their mission. That's why I know about this. She took me to the board. She trained 9 times. It was like I could zip her right now and pull it up in there and sew it back up. I would. It didn't work. And she had 2 master's degrees from major white institutions. But not that she got an education. She just couldn't get it. She couldn't get it. Now, it's just like I said enough. I can give you one other scenario. I was at an institution where we tried to get the alumni. You know, they say the alumni never get information from us, right? You all complain all the time, these alumni meetings, I don't ever get that from my school. Well, I was determined I was gonna send them something. So we went into the database, found out we had some people in there 4 or 5 times. Because the person that was hearing the data didn't know she had given it the same way every time. You know what I'm saying? She did it differently each time. She used the developer, she changed something to she did something. So they were there 5, 6 times. So it took months to clean it up by hand. You did, you got it cleaned up. The IT man was just so bad at me, he put a bullets still on me, what that? I told him that we didn't get the database, so people never got. Now, so we got it clean. I guess. They began to downsize as time passed. We had hired a very good, well-trained person. She was awesome to do the data. What they do, they let her go. They kept the person who had given them the data wrong at the right time. Yeah, it happens on your case. She had been on the money for years and years. Who's gonna get rid of her? Who's gonna move her? Nobody had to see everything what she had. You know what? Everybody knew her. I don't know why knew her. You know, this say was nobody else saying. You know, they had say she was a long-term employee. And so now they're getting everything. They're in, they're out. Now, you make decisions based on information. As president, I expect you to get good information so I can make decisions. When information is there, we can look at the end of the institution. I have bad information many times from the finance office. You know, sometimes they just keep you set the books. So information from the finance office and the admissions office. And you've all heard all kinds of stories. The admissions office say, we have a bumper crop coming this year. The applications are up 50%. We got all these students coming. Nobody has counted the fact that they're using that flawed common application and students apply to 25 other places. And here you are. Not only that, you don't require them to pay an application fee or a matriculation fee of $200 or $300. So you know, like, put down $200. It's serious. But if you don't have it in place, they will apply everywhere. And you can do what you do with now, so they don't have matriculation fees. They can't verify what they are telling you, and if you're president, you're pushing something to that, you don't need a job. You better not be so confident about this information. As an administrator, I learned early. You had better learn to inspect, verify, and certify what you get. Or you will be in your employment time soon, since most HBCUs are tuition driven. Now, let's get to the finance office. They have different ways sometimes of developing the cash flow statement. When I went to Shaw, we had to have a cash flow statement because the bank required. I went to the bank to try to get myself a line of credit, and they laughed at me. They said, don't you know you're in the toxic asset group? I said, I thought they were on TV. The company's in toxic asset group. An academic institution is a toxic asset. They can't give it away. I said, well, wait a minute. So I'm talking to people in this office. I said, what's this cash flow statement I got here? You made it up. I said, what you mean? You know, they said they demanded that we have one. We had to do one for the year before. We had to measure this year against last year. We didn't know what the capital year before. So this was another year, so we're 2 million now against that number for the year before. Yeah, it's wrong, my man. Yeah, I am making decisions based on these foolishness. So we had to sign off again. I said, look here, you better get your hand in there and get these numbers together, or you're going to be out of here real quick. And you look at your last year, they might have a thing like this. I'm serious about these numbers. Now, So what you had happen is, graduation would come. The board would come to the board meeting, they would leave feeling all good about great things are going. Then a week later, president finds out they didn't make payroll in July and June. You got to call them back for the emergency board. You want to pray about those. Then they got to find out some kind of financial privilege and say they don't have the money to pay anybody. Now, this example of these examples are not those people. I inherited a situation like this, and I can tell you right now, if I should have killed them and gotten away with it, I would. Acting is important. And when you have the administration making decisions about you and the institution without a full debt. And it can only lead to purgatory or the pits of hell. I'm just telling you, that's where you go. It's like what my friend D. Montgomery used to say. Most of you would not know him, but he was a finance person at Bethune-Cookman and trained many of the financial directors in this region who were in Europe. He said, it's like it should be unnecessary. The unqualified lead the unwilling, it should be unnecessary. And we have a lot of that. And then he said, if your outflow is more than your intake, your downfall will be your gain. That's that. Now, I admonish presidents and all of the people to hire good people. And look around your place, you got some good people. You got people that are stuck somewhere down in the system who can flourish and grow if you just pluck them out. I remember going to Johnson School and asking everybody for a resume. I was trying to figure out what they could do. And when we did that use them, everybody's not always in the right place. And so we need to figure out how to handle those things and put it. We have to invest in continuous training and in development. We have to use good data and measures for decision making. In order to do this, we must invest in the system. The state has to invest in the system, and the federal government. I know the money is getting right, but we still have to get some resources for them when we don't pay taxes. If we don't do this, we'll be providing and designing on what we can do. Now, most people tell you it's a cultural thing. That they need to fix the culture because the culture is bad. Well, there's a new article that just came out which will make you rethink that. The Harvard Business Review, I still read. The Harvard Business Review, April 2016, had an article about game-based culture. That's right, game-based culture. It says when organizations are broke and in crisis, there's always a call to fix the culture. Well, the culture change is what you get after you put in place new processes or structures in place to tackle the business challenge. This reworking an outdated strategy, which is what we have, this outdated strategy we have, and an outdated business model. The culture will evolve after you do that important work. Let's fix the processes and the model before you can fix the culture. So people are saying get busy and fix your higher education, redefine the processes, because students, our living is depending on you. I'm finished. Y'all got any questions? Mr. Brown, I'm finished. Yeah, what is up in that?
The Q&A.
Oh, that's the problem. I guess that's not me. I'm like, well,
I have a question. Dr. Brown, can we find some money in the budget and bring Dr. Gibson to the first?
Y'all gotta ask Dr. I'm a little bit. They probably work their break. Any other? Dr. Macchio? Why? No. Okay, good. Well, we're gonna give her one more round of applause. We're going to take 15 minutes for everybody to check out, do whatever they need to do. We'll start the next thing at 1:30. So push that forward so Shreveport can get on the road early. So everyone check out. Thank you so much. I was trying to do it. Oh, it's good. It's
I feel like
okay, all right. My staff, they'll get a process. Okay, good, good.
Hello. Nice to meet you. What's your name? Barbara Gummer. Nice meeting you.
What up, Cal?
I'm just a huge failure because we were all in graduate school at the same time. And now all of them have jobs where they give away money. And I have a job where I beg for money. So something went wrong. But Eugene Dr. Anderson has spent almost the last decade at the American Dental Education Association as their chief operating officer. Before that, about 7 years at the American Council on Education. And now beginning, is it July 1 or August 1? August 1 will be the incoming vice president for access and equity at the Association of Public Land Grant Universities. Dr. Nicole McDonald, he's a University of Virginia alumnus. His distinguished advisor is one of my mentors, Dr. Carol Kambiaki. Nicole Norflus finished Vanderbilt, and she spent some time at the Kentucky, McDonald spent some time at the Kentucky Community and Technical College System before joining the Lumina Foundation, where she works, I think, primarily with Goal 2025, and she's here with us today. And lastly, Dr. Nicole Norflus, who is at the Council on Opportunity and Education, who previously was there, also enrolled at the Pell Institute, where we worked together when I was at Patterson, and then spent some time as the program officer in education for the Oprah Winfrey Foundation, and has now returned back to the Council on Opportunity and Education. So let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Dr. Berman. We really are all very appreciative to be here with you today at this very important meeting. What's been a really stimulating discussion. There's always a challenge, certainly, with being the first set of speakers after lunch. So it is our goal to inform you, but to do it in a way that is engaging, so that we maintain your interest and help you work through that post-lunch malaise that usually hits people. We've taken some opportunity to discuss this, and so what we're going to do is really start a panel discussion that I will begin with some opening comments, and then draw some questions to my fellow panelists. But we want to encourage you to also ask questions as we proceed through this discussion. The title of this panel is Using Data to Improve HBCU's National Trends and Emerging Issues. And so the three of us, as Dr. Brown stated, come from organizations that look at higher education policy issues from a national perspective. So we're bringing that insight, but we really want to connect it with the very important work that you are engaged in. And when we each were invited by Dr. Brown, he said, first and foremost with this panel, talk about how you're using data today, but also feel free to give some perspective on how you use data in your career and how important data is to addressing emerging issues. And so I want to reflect a little bit on my own work, because I think it highlights an important understanding of how we see data, interact with data, and how powerful data can be. I'm a higher education policy researcher, so I've always been immersed in the data. But I was taught to not take it at face value, but to ask questions and to ensure that I understand both what I see, but also what I don't see. Because as I'm sure you understand, for every bit of data that someone gives you, there is additional data that they either are consciously or unconsciously not providing. And that may be very important to understanding the topic under discussion. As I thought about this, one early lesson came to mind. During the early 2000s, I was a researcher at the American Council on Education in DC, which is this umbrella group representing all colleges and universities. And for a number of years, one of the signature publications the organization was known for, and some of you may have used over the years, was the annual status report on minorities in higher education. So when I arrived, I was a researcher and ultimately became one of the lead researchers on this project. Now, when I got there, they had a simple system in place of sending a request once a year to the Department of Ed, to the research folks, and asking for the tables that they needed. And they would just take those tables and format them, put them into the publication under the AC banner. Now, I was young and energetic and ambitious, didn't have any gray hairs in my beard, didn't have any kids, so I thought, I can do this. I don't need their tables. I know the raw data. I'm going to create the tables myself. And you might say, well, why would you do that extra work? Freshness of data. At the time, that was the sole focus. If we took the tables that were publicly available from the department, they would be 2 years old. If I took the data, not the tables, but the data that was publicly available, it would only be a year old, and I could create my own tables. So I said, look, we're going to have the freshest, newest report ever, because I'm going to run all the data. So I set out to do that. I was very excited, and I hit a wall. My calculations seemed off. And I went back and I used my same methodology for previous years so I could see exactly what I was coming up with based on what the department had, and it didn't match. I couldn't figure out for the life of me what was going on. But what's interesting is the answer was really right under my eyes the entire time, but I just didn't want to believe that someone would be making certain assumptions about how they analyze the data. So the one thing that stood out was that in my data set, there's a category that you wouldn't find in any of the department's tables at that time. This is the early 2000s. And that was grades unknown. So when I ran the raw data, I wasn't selecting racial groups. I was telling you, give me everything that comes out based on what people, what institutions like North Southern can report. And so they had all the standard racial categories. Then they had this race unknown. People basically, for one reason or another, the institution just said, we don't know. Either they said they don't, the student didn't put it, or some issue, some anomaly. So I wonder, is the department just leaving this group out because it wasn't in their tables at all, category? And so I gave them a little bit too much credit, thinking that, okay, there must be some reasonable explanation. So I called up someone I knew in the office of the department and asked them about this issue. And they immediately knew what I was talking about. So, oh, yeah, that's the race unknown issue. I said, okay, tell me about the race unknown issue. Yeah, those, they don't really fit into a category, we don't know where to put them, so we imputed them and put them in the other categories. And I said, you impute them based on what? What information are you using to decide where you put these folks, which at the time was up to almost 1 million students. So we're not talking about a handful of students, we're talking about a nice size share of students, okay? And they said, oh, well, we just take it based on the proportion of the racial breakdown of students at a particular school. So they were essentially taking 1 million students who are race unknown and saying that, okay, if the overall college population is 50% African American, we're going to take 50% of the race unknowns and put them in African American. And so that's why on their tables, you didn't see a race unknown category, but the numbers look different than my numbers. And it was a head scratcher for me because it seemed like a very simplistic assumption to make and a solution really not based on any science that ultimately would impact what these numbers look like. And it was a lesson in how, even with no bad intentions, people are sometimes make decisions about how they analyze and present data. And it is ultimately up to those working with the data to understand exactly what is in the batter, so to speak. A lot of times people look at a table or chart and there's a big note section at the bottom. And usually we don't bother to read it. It's like the fine print, you know, on our phone bill, right? We don't bother to read it until we want to upgrade and get out of our contract. But before that, you assume it's okay. So what's interesting is when I went back to the tables that the department published, they actually had all this in the fine print about how they dealt with this, but you would have rarely had reason to look at it. So data can inform us, can enlighten us, but it also can be misleading. And whether you're a researcher working with raw data or an administrator who has to work with your own institutional data, you have a certain amount of control. That's one of the things that I've learned in my career that's really important as we look at data is you've got to look at what is this telling me and what else do I need to know, what else do I need to understand about a particular issue that we're facing. Another great example that I love is the commonly misstated fact that there are more black men in prison than college. How many people have heard that before? I'm gonna close my eyes, leave your hand up if you said that before. Okay. Now the reality is, numbers-wise, the numbers don't match up now. In 2013, there are about 1.4 million black men in college compared to just under 750,000 black men behind bars. But a friend of mine, Dr. Brian Cook, did some analysis historically into this, and he noted that there was a point, late 90s, where the numbers were reversed, and that number in prison was higher. It was actually close to 800,000, and the number enrolled in college was much smaller, 600,000. But even that isn't a complete picture of the data, because the average cohort, the average age cohort of students in college is 18 to 24, 6 years. You're comparing a 6-year age cohort with a prison population age cohort, which may be a 60-year cohort. So in what sense is a 6-year comparison relative to a 60-year comparison? Not much. But there's an example where there's data, it's telling us something, but it's not telling us everything. And so in the work that we do in the policy realm, it's trying to delve deeper in understanding not only what the initial set of data is, but what are the additional data points that we need to paint the full picture. And so I pose the question to our panelists to begin to have this discussion about how they use data to understand emerging issues and begin to look at problems, solve solutions for those problems. And so I want to throw out the first question, which is for Dr. McDonald. What are issues that Moon is thinking about when it comes to data and how data can be used to affect understand problems and come up with solutions?
Well, thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here. Again, my name is Nicole McDonald, and I'm with the Lumen Foundation Strategy Officer. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Lumen and then answer the question in particular. So, to tell you a little bit about Lumen, the Lumen Foundation is the nation's oldest foundation specifically focused on college attainment, increasing college attainment, increasing the post-secondary attainment of Americans. Lumen Foundation, when I say it's the oldest part of the foundation, National Foundation is focused on that work, is really only 14 years old. So it's a fairly new foundation in terms of the history of foundations. However, we don't do anything except look at the idea of post-secondary attainment for Americans. And in particular, as a part of our agenda, Lumina is squarely focused on leveraging an action agenda for creating a stronger nation. And we're looking at doing that by increasing the attainment of Americans from 40%, which has been pretty consistent for roughly the last 15 to 20 years, to 60% by 2025. Some of you may have heard of this ambitious goal called Goal 2025. And that is the goal to increase the attainment of Americans to 60% of Americans with some form of high quality post-secondary credential or bachelor's degree. And we're really ambitious about that in particular because we only have about 8.5 years to get there. And so as we think about that and the national agenda, in particularly the role of data in that work, Lumina Foundation is leveraging data in a couple of ways that I think are important. Some of the things that I'd like to say about it is Lumina has taken a methodological approach for leveraging data as a part of our work. And our hope and expectation and our drive is that you'll adopt a similar approach in leveraging data as a part of your work. And so to describe that a little bit, as part of this action agenda, to get to Goal 2025, Lumina has used data to define the agenda, define the problem. Lumina has used data to identify the interventions, and specifically who we're talking about in terms of trying to get to that goal for the Americans that we need to key on in order to get there, and then to track and monitor not only our progress towards the goal and work that we do, but also your progress towards the goal and work that you do. And so I think those are three essential things to understand about the use of data through Lumina's work in pursuit of Goal 2025. In particular, in defining the challenge, Lumina looked at a lot of data, international data, national data, and in particular, what we learned is that in 1995, the United States was number one among other countries in the world in terms of college completion. In 2015, we were somewhere between number 5 and number 7. And what's worse is that we were 13 in terms of the gains that we were making in terms of completion. So there are less developed countries that are outpacing us in gaining in terms of college completion, moving faster toward more ambitious goals than we are. And so we recognize that in terms of economic mobility, economic stability, and the opportunities that we need to have available for Americans in order to be a stronger nation, a nation that's at number one, we need to mobilize and mobilize quickly. And so as we've been thinking about this work in terms of how do we get to this number, how do we come up with a that we know that we have the educated citizens across the country to be the place for life-sustaining jobs, wage-sustaining jobs, jobs that are going to give people the opportunity to live a solid working class, stable working class, stable middle class life. The kind of life that we expect when we talk about the United States of America. Well, we've got to get moving. We can't let these other countries outpace us. So what is it that we really need to think about doing? Well, a significant part is understanding and using the data about actually just completed credentials. What kinds of credentials have they completed, and who is left out, and what kinds of credentials take to get that goal. And what we learned as we looked at, and we did some census data to track the proportion of Americans who completed at least some form of college degree, and had to do some other work to figure out who completed high quality credentials. And as we looked at this, what we discovered is that in order to get to Goal 2025, we actually can't continue to do this as usual in the United States. So we know that there is have been long-standing, persistent, historic issues in terms of equity regarding post-secondary access and post-secondary attainment. And for a long time, the agenda in America, where diversity and access was concerned, was making sure that particularly students of color, traditionally underserved students, had access to college, but no one was thinking about whether or not they actually completed college, or whether or not they actually completed credential. And so we realized that access begs the question of access to what is we're looking at. And the outcomes say that we're going to continue to be behind the world if we don't actually leverage a culture of college completion versus a culture of college access. in which students, and particularly the kinds of students that we need to aren't actually attaining. So as we looked at that information, we realized that we don't have enough of the students who have been traditionally well served by higher education in order to get to them. So not only do we need to increase the proportion of Americans who actually have a high quality credential, but the only way that we can do it is if we begin to serve better those Americans who we could traditionally not serve well in higher education. We cannot make it without Latino students. We cannot make it without American students. We cannot make it without first generation students, low-income students. We can't make it without adult students. And really, we need to increase the numbers even of Native American students who are accessing and attaining post-secondary education in order to get to the world, which is a big shift. So we had to look at that data to find out, well, where are our students, who are our students, and what does this really look like? And so as a part of our work, we're emphasizing the idea of enrollment persistence and inclusion. And as we do this, and as we thought about what are going to be the strategies that we can leverage in order to get to that goal, what we thought about was how we could be very strategic in the use of the data that already existed. And I want to take just a little break before I go further. I really appreciated the discussion about how you came to leverage research as a part of your career. And one of the things that I want to say in terms of our thinking about data is that we talk a lot about data. And I think when we say data, we think about it in very all kinds of terms. You know, the database that has all the numbers and all the information. As a part of our work, we are asking we are asking folks to leverage data. We are asking folks to be thoughtful in terms of evidence, the use of evidence. I'm sure that the discussion on the culture of evidence is new to anyone here, but we also know that everybody doesn't need the raw data. Some folks actually just need the information, the analysis of the data. And we're asking that we're thoughtful about how we think about all of those things. We're trying to call out and be thoughtful about the use of all of those things in our work. And so we would definitely say data should be used to help drive change. Data should be used to help drive change. Data should be used to help identify the strategic approaches that you take for knowing who your students are to help meet and address their needs. And so the way that Lumina is leveraging data and information as a part of our work is in the way that we can organize the work. So we already know that even though there are lots of folks that provide credentials, besides just post-secondary institutions, besides just colleges and universities, we know that in order to get to that goal, at least 2/3 of the lion's share of the work is still going to have to be done by colleges and universities. Colleges and universities are going to be the bulk of the institutions that get us to that. And so we need for transformative things to happen at colleges and universities in order to get there. We know that no matter how many other folks are doing coding boot camp, whatever other kind of work is going on, really there's going to be institutions like the traditional colleges and universities that now push toward that goal. And as we think about that, then we think about really a couple of things. So we think about post-secondary institutions then as being at the heart of our work. And we think about it that way because ultimately to get to that goal, we need for us to be looking at and asking very different kinds of questions using information in different ways. Specifically, we have been having a conversation for 20 years along with our college access agenda. Is our students college ready? And what is it going to take to get them ready to be successful in college? Well, Lumina is saying, facing 8.5 years to get to goal 2025 to create for us as Americans a stronger nation, is that we have to have a different question. Part of the question, and we're not abandoning the idea of student ready to go to college, but we're asking the question, is your college student ready? And when we think about that, the institutions in the center of our work, and asking that question, and then looking at the information, the data, the research that will help, the evidence that will will help us move forward as an important processing model. So we're asking the question, are your institutions ready? And then what is it gonna take to get there? And as a part of that, then we are saying, well, we know that we exist in a context. We also know as part of our work that there's some evidence, some data, some information already exists about the kinds of things that students face in post-secondary institutions, and there's already a lot of information about what works to create student success. And with only 8.5 years left, we don't have a lot of time to begin everything from the beginning as if it's new and if it's not. We actually need to begin to mobilize, act on what we already know, on what we already have a solid research-based and evidence-based around. And we need to act in concert, not just as independent institutions working in isolation, but we need to act as institutions that can leverage data and information and evidence in such a way that allows you to be opportunistically self-aware about what you do well, what you do not do, and disadvantages that are created by your context, who we reward your students, what is it that they need, and what is it that you're doing to intervene, and then how do you know that the work didn't work, and how do you instead of the next best from that. So as we are suggesting that, we also know that in order to be opportunistically self-aware, which is essential to becoming student ready, if you're clueless, it doesn't work out right. So in order to be opportunistically self-aware, you not only have to know what you need to know and what you maybe didn't know about what was going on in your own context, but then you need to be able to leverage the resources in your context based on that. You also need to be able to reach beyond your context into the ecosystem. To leverage the partnerships, the relationships, the data, the evidence, the information, in order to support what it is you don't have to make a difference in the success of your students. And so we've aligned our work along those ideas. So institutions are in the center, but we're also saying that our students are all a part of the community. It's important for communities to be activated. Communities have resources to support its citizens, and our students, for residents of communities, but for and became our students. We also know that you operate in a state policy context, and I'll be very transparent and say we have a lot of state policy context. Movement is committed to the ethics of accountability and organizing to leverage resources and opportunities that are going to help create institutional change and transformation. We also know you operate in a federal context. And so we do work, no lobbying, no advocating, but educating federal legislators, in particular about who students are. And we do that because our federal legislators are making decisions for folks who went to school when they went to school. They talk very often about, well, back when I was in school, back when my kids were in school. Today is a very different student than the student of yesterday. And as we're pushing toward this goal, today's students that we have to serve, remember, are students that we have not served well. So what served you 30 years ago is something that didn't serve the students that we need to have success with well in order to get to the goal. So we've got to figure out how to leverage the ecosystem resources to help post-secondary institutions become student ready. We also have organized our work on a base of promising practices, things that we think we can be innovative about, but that we don't have as much data or information about. But things that we know can add a lot of value. Different academic and business models. Certain entities that work, for example, with the idea of competency-based education. There are opportunities there to think about how we leverage that as part of a new way of thinking about your business framework to provide access to for corporations. We are also looking at the idea of college costs. You know, I remember being in graduate school, working in the area of institutional research at a nearby school in Nashville, and so I was working over at Belmont, and their president was actually the lead of the National College Cost Commission. And And so I found it so interesting that here we are, you know, low these many years later, still talking about college costs. I pulled out the report. I wanted to know, did we do anything they said we did 20 years ago? And it turns out, so now we're having this fresh conversation about college costs that if we would never had before. But we are at a time and at a place where we can't keep having the same conversation over again. So we at Blue are using the data to understand the implications of cost, particularly on the kinds of students we're interested in serving, which by the way are the kinds of students you serve. And those are students that are largely first generation that have large amounts of unmet financial needs or lower students that are likely to health students. And so we're looking at, well, what does that mean then? Conversations in this country about escalating costs and access and completion when so many students start and they cannot afford to compete. They run out of money. But that's what data will open up for you as a forum in terms of opportunity and leverage the conversation and help you understand what the strategies and resources can be. So we're talking about college costs and how we can be innovative and thinking about how we look at cost and affordability with our content. And then we are looking at actually what does it mean at a high quality credential? What does that mean? We talk about high quality credentials. We know that low quality credentials aren't going to create the opportunities that students need. We know that no credential is not going to create the opportunities that students need in our academic success. So what does it mean to have a high quality credential and how do we create the pathways to that? And that is another line of our work where we're trying to be very innovative and creative and thinking about how do we leverage this idea of high quality credential and pathways that will allow the maximum number of students multiple offerings and offerings and pursue that. So that's how we're looking at data as part of our agenda. We let it drive the goal. We let it drive our thinking about who our students are, who we need to reach out to. We let it drive our thoughts and considerations about the interventions that can be helpful in meeting the goal. And then we are tracking our work and the work that is going on across the country relative to that. So that's kind of I think, 50,000 views of how we're using data specifically in our work. There's more, but we've got more questions.
So Dr. Murphy, let me ask you, the same question essentially is what are the issues COE is thinking about when it comes to data and how you utilize data to address these issues?
So, everyone, just looking at my bio, you know, and I don't really remember the icon. First icon I worked for who was the president emeritus of the Council for Opportunity Education. And I say that because, given the council's history, it was established in 1981, so it's a 35-year history of advocating successfully, I might add, for the growth of college access success programs to be funded by the Department of Education, TRIO programs. And when you look at where TRIO programs were, they were established in 64 actually, the first program, throughout the authorizations, how the appropriations has grown, the programs that has grown is, you know, 100-fold. So that's the first icon. And the council's purpose is just that, to advance college opportunities, access, success, completion for low-income, first-generation students and adults, as well as individuals who may have disabilities. And so one of the successes that we like to point out is that this term now is part of the vernacular that we use when we talk about data, and that is low income, as well as first generation. In looking at the data, to your question, one of the things that we found critically important was what's going on with those programs, what's happening with that population of low income first generation students, and how can we make a case to support their efforts. And so the council, back in, when I started my work with the GA, which then back in years ago, we did that. Established this, what was then the Center for Study of Opportunity now, has since received the stamp of approval from the Lake Military Board of Health to turn the Pell Institute to the Department of the United Nations. And so the Pell Institute just published its latest indicator report, available online as well. But that intention in terms of data for the council is very much about understanding what is our population, what is going on when it comes to low-income students, first-generation students. What is happening with that population? Are they accessing college? Are they, completing, retaining year to year? While there was a lot of discussion about retention at one point, our focus is very much about completion success. And so, how do we ensure that that's going on? And given our, as a member organization representing those TRIO college access and success programs, how are we supporting professional development for our members to be able to utilize the data that they're doing as well? And so, for a number of years, the council was really quite intentional in terms of trying to promote the Department of Education's development of data to demonstrate the success of your program. Of course, given, I think Dr. Taylor mentioned that earlier, that the whole accountability movement, which could have worked to our disadvantage, have we not, been actively involved with, understanding what we are. But I will say that just in terms of just wrapping, trying to bring things together and not allow some time for the question, is there's a current report that's out, and it's the Support Services report. That was done by the Department of Education. They analyzed SSS data relative to UPS longitudinal data. There are some limitations in the years they analyzed 2007 to 2006 SSS programs, college 2003 with the UPS longitudinal data, and looking at that 6-year graduation or 3-year graduation transfer from 2-year colleges. And it's quite telling, not just the levels of success that these programs have, the field programs have on the institutional campus, but what the dynamics are when it comes to the full institutional climate, looking at the climate, the environment of all higher ed, 4-year, 2-year, rural, urban, suburban, rural, and particularly there's more than 11% of those programs are represented. So I think for us, we're utilizing data not just to say, here's what's going on, but then how do we take that to make a difference in terms of where we want. Also sought to do that, the council was received one of the first grants for I3 investment innovation. We sought to do that with the college access programs that we work with sites. And again, looking at data, the goal is to promote a data-driven culture. And as part of that initiative, our interest was it's not just about having data and saying, well, this is what we want to look at compliance, as opposed to the growth of the population that is utilizing the data, that is a part of the data, to engage students in the data, to engage college access providers in the data, so that they can not just comply, but utilize the data to make informed decisions. Sometimes it's hard. When you look at, we're receiving funds from the entity, if the data demonstrates that we aren't making progress, then we may not get funded. But it's actually a good thing. If the data demonstrates that you aren't making progress, then the benefit is to utilize the data to say to the funder or whoever, this is where we need to make the changes in an area that we hadn't identified. That is, not respective of our particular context. And so we recognize context is everything. And so let me just wrap it up there. I think, just to say, I think it's key that we all understand, and I've heard it from a number of times, partnerships are key. And I think that is also a function of what we must use the data to strengthen our partnerships and understanding how we move forward.
take a moment and I could ask the folks some more questions, but I want to see if there are questions that you all have. Certainly, there's been a lot of discussion about data and data throughout the entire day. So there might be some questions already brewing. So I think we have some mics that are moving around. Then we need some folks with mics, but let's go ahead and I can help out. Any questions?
I guess one of the things, I think was mentioned that HBCUs need to look at a new business model. Could you elaborate in terms of what you mean by a new business model?
I think that maybe just what you said that. And so we are looking at a new business model in a number of ways. So there are a lot of opportunities to leverage the way that we work in terms of, I'm sorry, I wasn't speaking loudly enough. Can everybody hear me in the back? So as we are looking at work related to new business models at Luna, we're actually looking at opportunities to redesign the way that institutions do the work that they do, but in such a way that won't say break the bank. So one opportunity I mentioned was looking at competency-based education. We are really looking at Luna for, as we talk about, multiple programs and offerings for universities to take advantage of opportunities to work with students who have some learning. At one point, I think we estimated that there were roughly 35 million people in our country who have some college and no degree. Now that we have had the opportunity to get information about folks with a proportion of certificates, I think that's close to about 25 million with some college and no degree. Well, if everybody has to begin at the very beginning and participate in your secondary institution, we're not really leveraging the competencies necessarily that they acquire not only from the other learning and some other post-secondary institutions, but maybe some of the learning and training provider, or even knowledge and experience that they got on the ground. We know that any number of schools have programs to design, or at least one program that might be designed for adults or for non-traditional students. But the truth of the matter is, most of the students that we're going to be serving a significant proportion are non-traditional students. So then how do you set up a business model that lets you leverage programs that you're great at, but also that creates opportunities to bring more students into the institution, taking advantage of what they have. And how do you do that in a way that, again, doesn't break the bank? So we didn't know really a lot about, well, if we're saying that competency-based education would be an opportunity, we think it could. It certainly could accelerate the completion of degrees. So what does that mean in terms of the traditional business model, in terms of how students pay for tuition, and how do we do it in such a way that doesn't have students paying for competencies that they already acquired while not breaking the bank for post-secondary institutions? And then there are other models that we're taking a look at. So there are institutions that work as, for example, accredited aggregators. So maybe students have credit from a number of places. They help pull that credit together and then work with secondary institutions to leverage how that credit may connect with the program. So we're looking at those kinds of opportunities, as well as having conversations about traditional approaches to thinking about business models that actually work for serving the types of students who are increasingly accessing our institutions. So it's a broad concept, and it's one that falls in innovation line of work, so we're still figuring it out. But I will tell you, once we figure it out, we're going to expect to see opportunities in your
Let me just add to that point. When it comes to this issue, I think it's a perfect example when we talk about competency-based education of how the paradigm of higher education is changing, and we have to keep up, because what's interesting is that when John Taylor spoke earlier, he talked a lot about how the competitive environment for HBCUs has changed, right? So you're competing with PWIs for students. A sector that he didn't mention that you also are competing with is a sector that has been really out in front of competency-based learning, and that's the for-profit sector, right? So despite having the highest price tags out there, they've essentially been able to use research and competency-based education to develop a model that then they can, essentially sell to the students and say, look, we value your time. We understand that it's limited. You're a working adult. You have kids. You have a family. And so we've set up a program that's going to give you an opportunity to show what you already know and place you on the right point in the path, not simply at the beginning. So I think there's this business model that we have to look at. And certainly there's a lot of unsavory elements in the for-profit sector, but when it comes to looking at competency-based education and how we measure where students are and how we progress along is something that certainly we're going to have to do. And you know that it's gaining credibility when even the accrediting agencies are looking at changing accreditation standards so it's not just a seat time-based system. I think someone else was, yeah.
That's what I want to follow up on. A lot of cases that regulate, they say we should run more like businesses, but
They were so state regulated and then regulated by the accrediting body in terms of what we can do is hard sometimes to determine a balance around that like in speedboat. Right.
So, I'm about to make Mike. My name is William Brown, Southern University of New Orleans. You all brought us a conversation about the business model, the new business models. In June 2017, the National Sponsored Program Administrators Alliance, NSPA, is having its national conference here at the Marriott Hotel at 555 Canal Street. Two of the people that we wanted to invite to that conference already spoke. That's Mr. Taylor and Dr. Yancey. The third person that we were going to invite was Jamie Marasolis from the Lumen Foundation, because the primary concern about that conference in 2017, we're still working on the title, was brand new money. I'll say this, brand new money. Now, I'm trying to get around to the date, is why I'm bringing this up. We think it's very important in this day and time to bring some new money. We don't know if that means have a business model that's related to for-profit type individuals. Just get us some money as much as we need to maintain academic excellence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How does this new data that we're talking about? Where does the new money fit in that's necessary to sustain us and take us forward, fit in with all of this data that we're going to try to get in order to make ourselves or present ourselves in the best possible? Is that a reasonable question?
Well, I'm in line apparently, and I need to be close to it. Can you hear me back there? So I would say a couple of things in response. So the first thing is Jamie Marasolis does presentations all over the place. He is certainly, I think, interested in opportunities to be a part of conversations where there is some new thinking. So if you just, it's not a daunting process. If you just go to Luna's website, and if you look for their speakers request form, you'll be able to, identify the meeting that you're having, and you can request anybody from Luna that you'd like, or if you need to appoint them based on topic, you'll try to find someone. And so if Jamie or Services is available, then they'll look around and see if there's another staff member who would be available to attend. And there are about 60 of us that work at Luna Foundation. So since we're talking about 2017, I'm optimistic that we can find somebody. And so I want to just encourage you to do that. Very often people don't know how to get people to the table that they really want to hear from. So I wanted to be very transparent about that. I also want to be very transparent about the idea that we don't have any expectation of Luna. There's going to be a lot of new money to do anything. We know that these are tight times, that the context is on how we want to focus mentioned is one where we have been, public post-secondary education has been long hit and hard hit by budget cuts. There are accountability frameworks that sometimes seem to work to our benefit, and sometimes, pose some challenges in getting there. But we don't anticipate troves of new money, not even out of the Great Recession, and probably heading soon into another one. So what we are suggesting is that it's important to be creative about the resources that you have. The data part of that comes in because you need to be able to identify within your context the things that are working and the things that are not working. Because if it's not working, you might need to explore why and then how to repurpose those resources for something that is. So many times in post-secondary, and I do know because I've worked at institutions and systems and state coordinating boards, we just keep adding on. We never cut anything off the list. We've been doing this forever. It's our history, it's our tradition. And so we're just going to keep on doing it, whether it's working or not. And when new things come along, then we just add them to the list. We don't take things off. I would anticipate many new resources, not in the way of big money, including big money from foundations. What I would though suggest is that we're trying to say, use the data to help you make decisions about what you continue and what you discontinue, what's working and what's not working for your institution at the bottom line and also for your students. And then I would say that in terms of leveraging the ecosystem, there may not be new money, but you can go far with new relationships. So if you're working with industry partners, begin to strengthen those relationships. Look for new industry partners. Industry does have some resources, and if you leverage the resources that you have with the resources that others have, it may not be traditionally what we think of as new money, but it will certainly open up new opportunities and new possibilities.
Any other questions at this moment? Let me say a little bit also about APLU, where I'll be, and how I intend to utilize data. So here's something that I find really interesting, touched on it earlier, is, we're having a conversation with top of these HBCUs, you will get a sprinkling of data, and there's data that pops up a good narrative, and there's data that pops up a bad narrative, right? And I was just looking at some stuff and thinking about this, and several studies, of course, talk about challenges, and some of the major ones listed are declining financial support, increased competition with other institutions, larger, better funded institutions, retention graduation rate issues, declining enrollments, changes to federal policy. But then here are a few stats, and these are the kind of things that people certainly have heard before, but really are just continue to be amazing every time I say them out loud, that although HBCUs make up just 3% of all colleges and universities, they produce 27% of African American students with bachelor's degrees in STEM fields. One out of every 3 of the nation's African American engineers graduated from one of 11 HBCUs, one of which is Southern. This other one I hadn't seen it so clearly illustrated, which is they looked at between 2002 and 2011 among top 50 institutions. HBCUs collectively produced 1,800 African American graduates who earned a doctorate in science and engineering. Predominantly white institutions only accounted for 1,600. So if you go back to that earlier number, 3% of actual institutions, it's pretty astounding. And so APLU, for those not familiar, is a higher association that represents land-grant colleges and universities, about 235, including the historically Black land grants, but 20 institutions, Southern is one of them. And so the office that I will be taking leadership over in August is charged with supporting and assisting those institutions, we call them the 1890 institutions. And for me, the focus is looking at the data to really understand this complex picture, this mixture of challenges and opportunities, and really asking questions about what can we do, what can we do collectively. As someone who's been based in Washington, D.C., my perspective has always been that the answers lie in your hands because you're the ones making decisions every day and interacting with the students and your colleagues. And so answers regarding changes and competitive, how to become more competitive, how to be innovative, answers are out there. I think Dr. McDonald's talked about it. One of the focus areas of the 2025 initiative is to determine, I call it the best of the best. Right? Everybody says they have best practices, but when you evaluate, some clearly turn out better than others, and the goal is not to put anyone on the spot, but to say, look, let's all put our best practices to the test so that we can determine which ones don't need changing, but which ones maybe 20 years ago, they were a pretty nifty idea, but today, not as effective, not as impactful. So I'm bringing a data perspective to have these conversations and discussions in the 1890 community, but also the larger HBCU community, because certainly there is so much on the accomplishment and opportunity side of the HBCUs that I believe that with the right collective action, the right leadership, that we can address those challenges. So that's a perspective on what I'll be doing in my role with the APLU. We have more time for some more questions. Certainly, let me ask you all a question. Sometimes it's good from the panel to throw it back out there. Topic is about how to utilize data to make decisions, understand problems, and it would be great to hear from some of you all is how data plays a role in your daily work at the institution. What data do you have? How is it helpful? And also, what data don't you have? Sometimes the roles that we can play from a national perspective is providing national level data that allows you to make the right comparisons so that you understand truly how what you're doing stacks up to other institutions. So any brave souls want to share a little bit about how you utilize data in your daily work at Southern? Please don't be shy.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm trying to stay awake. Absolutely. I working with Title 3. Finding a little bit of some stuff in the office. It is absolutely required that we collect data every year, build on the baseline data, set goals based upon this earlier year's data, et cetera. So Dr. Brenda Jackson has us going like that. But I guess what question I want to know, for example, I'm over the grants and research administration, those kinds of things. All my data is published every year online. It's out there. But what we're talking about, can you tell me how, somebody, my data, how is my data going to contribute to this big data picture? I mean, can you tell me specifically, as well as a couple other people in here who are not in enrollment, not in admissions, and, work with this data directly per se? Can you tell us how my data will fit into the big picture? And by the way, my data includes how much money we raise, how many people grants, how many organizations we work with, what kind of new research, et cetera, the basic grants and research thing. But how can that data fit into this big data picture that you all are talking about?
I'll start with this because I've actually been doing a lot of thinking in some previous projects on research funding. So I think your data fits in certainly painting a picture of where the institution stands as it relates to its research activity, level of support, level of activity, areas of activity. That's really important. Now, here's another example where a lot of times your data will end up in some larger report, not by you, but by some other entity, and it will usually end up in a list, right? Usually largest to smallest in terms of research funding. And then that becomes a metric for this discussion of how Southern stacks up in terms of research funding. And what's interesting is there's a perfect example of how you got a piece of the data that you can take, it tells you one thing, it doesn't tell you a lot more. And so I was dealing with the same kind of discussion with another community, and I said, these schools aren't all the same size. They don't all have the same number of researchers, they don't all have the same number of research students. Yeah, we put them on the same list as if they are all the same. And for a comparative purpose, you really need to see the dollars along with the research capacity, almost like a per researcher, like a per dollar researcher equation that would really be a more comparable number. Now, there may also be some other variables that are important, but I think that's the kind of thing that is part of what we all have to do. And, in the earlier presentation, someone in the back didn't like how they saw one of the studies being presented. And so one of the things that we were talking about is the need to augment any study that you see and get it out there so that they can control the narrative and control the discussion. If you know that what you're contributing based on your size in terms of research stands greater than how it might look compared to much larger institutions, then you've got to document that with the data. And if you need national data, then that's where you can work with other associations, like APLU, for example, to help you get that additional data, frame that context so that you can make the conversation a fact-filled conversation, so that then when you're talking to state legislators, talking to other folks, that you can give this full picture about here's what we do, we're an institution this size, this number of programs, and we are producing this much in terms of research and innovation. So there are ways that you can take the data that you have, add it with your data to give a full picture. Please.
Two more questions. They're gonna have to flip the room. Two more questions.
Looks like we're running out of time. I'm so happy for this presentation today because I call the data office for each institution the engine of the university. And I think I'm correct because a lot of things we cannot get done without data. Most of all, in your accreditation, you cannot pass accreditation, you don't have an effective data system. We are on the SAT system, for instance. There are 2.5, called 2.5 institutional effectiveness. You don't have your assessment data, student planning, outcome assessment data set. You will fail that standard. If you fail any of the core requirements, it's a failure, complete failure of the accreditation examination. There are 2.8 that you have adequate number of faculty, so about data. Every semester we develop the data of the faculty that teaching your classes and how many courses you are teaching, which one are online and which one are lab-based. 2.9 is the library, so how many books you have and so on. There are 2.10 is student planning and student support services. Don't back it up, data, evidence that it is verifiable, they are not passive, and so on and so forth. To the extent that last year, SACS came up with, I think it's directed by the federal government. We want each institution to place on the accreditation website data reflecting student success. And I believe the reason why they are doing that is what everyone in the country or everyone in the world will be able to look up an institution and be able to see how well their students are performing. First to second year, retention, first to third year, retention, passage grade in the essential rate, and so on and so forth. So, all the time for this workshop today, because sometimes when deans and chairs and myself in the office of Chancellor of Academic Affairs, we are asking folks to please send in data. This workshop today has shown clearly why we are doing what we do. Because no institution can make any progress or can achieve and be competitive unless very strong data system. Thank you. One more thing, sorry, this is so important to me that even faculty can design, we have somebody who can step in and teach wherever that person is. The data office is a dangerous office to use individuals from. Because there are some data, if you don't have people who are well trained to do the work, to put the institution in the jeopardy.
If I could reflect, I'm trying to do it without losing the depth of what I'm trying to say. To the gentleman's question back there, and to your point, I think it's true, there's a lot to be gained and understood when you understand the retention data, the completion data, the student support services provided. But to the question, and to your recognition of the danger of losing a data person, I think that is the first step. To recognize that the data should not ever sit with one person. The data should not ever sit solely in your office. The data should be a part of a collaborative process, so that the president's office, the provost, whether it's the vice president of the academic affairs, that everyone, particularly those in leadership positions, should make it their priority to ensure that a collaborative, a collective, some group of people sit together on a quarterly basis to discuss what the priorities are with regard to the institution's mission and what the data look like with regard to that priority. So it's not just the data office, the IR person's responsibility. It's not just understanding what finances look like relative to the grants that we have from the office. It is about the persons that work with those students in financial aid, the people that work with the student support services, whoever else has an intention in terms of the enrollment managers to ensure that the students are coming into the institution, that they are maintained and succeed in acquiring their degree. It's about those, and not just the institution, it's also about engaging the community, okay, the parents that have feedback and say, well, my child comes to this institution. It's about your policymakers, and it's about business people in the community who may have an investment in the students that receive their degrees from the institution. So it is not solely about one individual, okay? Data is a function of everybody's responsibility. And unless there's a broad collaboration, and I say this to everyone, unless there is a broad collaboration with understanding what the data look like, whether you know it or not, but having people from different backgrounds inquire, what does this mean? Then you can ask some of those deeper questions, those broader questions, and even address some of the unintended consequences that may arise. As Johnny Tate mentioned when it came to North Carolina and those 4 or 5 institutions. The unintended consequences are also very important. But similarly, it's also understanding when you look at data, that there, in addition to context, there is also the interaction variable, as they say. And that interaction variable cannot be measured. You cannot measure the value in some instances. They just created it now, I mean, from Dr. Ellis's report, about how does it make you feel? Who's the person that inspired you most so that you could continue along the program? And some of those are interaction variables. How many times did that person touch you and say, you know, this is real, you can achieve your dream? You know, or someone tell you that it's impossible. Those are interaction variables. But in terms of understanding the data, that also matters. But it's upon everyone's responsibility to understand what isn't in your own department, so it's not siloed, it is a collective effort. And so as I wrap this up, one of the things that the council does, that we've done with the Cyber program, is we first looked at what is our responsibility for college access programs when it comes to the data. And so we developed this one piece about tracking student data, and how do we look at how we have a few of those. So for people that want to look at the data and what we're doing with college access, this is one. For the other one, it's really about, this one, it's about making college access a priority. And so that item 2 creates, booklet 2 creates a strategy. It talks about the strategy to build that priority, how college access and success is a priority, who needs to be a part of it. And 1 talks about looking at the data, but also in 2, you've got to know your data. And you have to have everyone involved, from top to the grassroots, okay, to make it possible. So, yes, there is a data, and that's why everyone.
I got pulled to the back. We're going to interrupt, because I'm going to cheat. I know I'm in southern Louisiana and not northern Louisiana. This is Catholic country, but I'm a Baptist. So I want to do like I've seen the pastor do in the Baptist church when the soloist is sung extremely well. How many of y'all enjoyed that song? Let's give a round of applause. Now, for the panel, I was outside because one of the chancellors pulled me out, and then someone who serves on our system data governance summit and said, this session is rich. And what it really needs to be is a working action team session to help the Southern University system drill down into designing the data plan. And so we're going to put you on the spot right now and ask, will you come back in a small group setting to help us do that data system plan? I'm going to do like on the airlines on the exit row. Are you willing and able to assist? I need a verbal yes from each person. Yes. Oh. Yeah.
Yes, and
Okay. Yes, let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're going to come back. So campuses who have their, of course, you're going to set up the PowerPoint for the next session. Campuses who have a data team. Each campus should have at least 12 members of the team. Let's do a room check while they're putting up the PowerPoint. Does anyone from SUSLA know about the data governance team? Anyone? Anybody serve on data governance at SUSLA? Only one person, 2, 3 people. 3 people. We're looking for you at the planning session. What about SUNO? SUNO, data governance and data governance team. I see 2 hands. And live. Let's go to live. Okay. All right. And then what about Baton Rouge? Baton Rouge. I see 1 hand flailing in the back. Lord have mercy. Let me do a check. I want to do a check before we go further. I need everybody to put their paper, pencil, and your cell phone down, Raymond Clark. Everyone, quickly, make your hands free. Let me see your hands, quickly, very good job. Put your hands on your lap, We're not going to do anything. Now, what I need you to do is I want to see if we can reach the sky in the Southern University system. I need everyone to reach as high as you can. Reach as high as you can. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, now I see you. Now I need you to reach a little higher. Reach a little higher. Beautiful. See, that's the problem in the system. You missed it. I asked you to reach as high as you could the first time. But everyone held back. No one reached as high as they could. But then when we pushed and told you to reach higher, you did it, right? And so this is the time we have to work together to reach as high as we can. We're going to do this a session. We learned something in the break on the last 2 sessions around bringing people in. I don't see Ben Pugh, but we are going to be bringing Dr. Apine back also to work with us in small groups. What we are about to do is, plagiarism is illegal. What we're going to do is look and learn from what the LCTCS system is doing. They have developed and designed a system-wide data plan, a system-wide set of goals, and system-wide rubrics for assessing campus growth and change, all from a system approach. And so we're not going to try to get all the way into it, but we want to give everyone an opportunity to see what a system approach looks like. Dr. Apine had a full presentation, but we're going to highlight only on what happens in system data planning and how LCTCS set up their goals. And then at the end, I'm only going to come back with one question and ask sort of, is that something we want to consider based on what we've heard today? Who would be willing to work on that, and what might next steps be? And then we're going to end a little bit early. There's a little bit of weather moving through, and we want to make sure that everyone is able to travel safely in the weather. We're asking everyone to complete their evaluation forms. I'm almost finished with my evaluation form. But our next and final speaker is Dr. Alexander Apine. Yes, Dr. Alexander Apine. He is responsible as Assistant Vice President for Policy for LCTCS's 2020 plan around building a workforce of tomorrow. Now, what was so interesting is I knew Dr. Apine from his time as Vice President at Langston University. And then I later learned that he would spend time at Grambling University, and I said, oh my gosh, a traitor. There's no way we could bring him to the Southern University system, and he works at LCTCS. But I discovered, fortunately, that he is a Southern University alum, and so he is a part of the Jaguar Nation. Let us welcome Dr. Alexander.
We get through the little IT setup here. Good afternoon. Oh, we can do better. Good afternoon. I know there are a lot of Jaguar supporters in here. And I can tell you this, I bleed the blue and gold. With your undergraduate degree, your 2 masters, and a PhD from the Nelson Mandela School of Public Policy and Urban Affairs, you are a Jaguar good. I often call my friends at LSU, so they have this little slogan. Live what? Live purple, love gold. Well, I say, with the Jaguar family, may all of your sunny days be golden, and may those beautiful skies always remain blue. We love our institution. We love our institution. Is there yet? So we're trying to get that reordered, but one of the biggest pieces, and I'll start with, I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Policy. When we think of big data, big decisions, the first question for us is to ask, where is the role of data within the whole policy conversation, right? Because the whole place is full of data. You can go to the library and find a lot of data. The question is, how does the data source fit into your policy objectives? And you think back, let's step and think of those 4 policy areas when you think of the policy cycle. Think of a good policy, you begin with what? The agenda setting. When you're trying to set your agenda, you're gonna need what? Quality data. Because remember, policies undergird programs. Programs are then implemented, and when we hear of assessment offices and the assessment function, that typically comes what? At the tail end of your program implementation. But in order to implement your programs, in order to design your programs, you need the use of data. So data permeates the entire policy cycle. One of the big pieces, I serve as the government relations officer for the community college system. And by the way, the community college system in Louisiana today has 150,000 students. Let me repeat that. 150,000 students spread across 13 colleges. What I find most interesting, especially with my Jaguar pride kicking in, BRCC, that has only been in existence probably the last 10 years, really has pumped up, has a student enrollment of 10,000 students today. Now, what is Southern's enrollment for the Baton Rouge campus? Anybody? 6,300? A little more than that? Do we have any Jaguar graduates, alumni in here? When I came out of the class of 94, and I remember back then, Chancellor Marvin Yates was the chancellor. Southern had, the Baton Rouge campus had almost 10,000 students. Y'all remember that? Now, how is it that an infant, a toddler, has come on the scene and in the Baton Rouge market can have close to 8,000 to 10,000 students today, and our enrollment keeps dropping? Then one may say, well, perhaps it's all of the white folks. They, tend to go to the white institutions. Except at BRCC, close to 60% of the students are African American. So you take 60% of 10,000, that's about 6,000 students. Every one of those students could have been on the Southern University Baton Rouge campus. Now, I love it being there. It's what I do. I promote institutionally. But guess what? River Parish's community college, that's in Section campus, has a student enrollment that's approaching 5,000. So BRCC, River Parish is combined and close to 50,000. Is there anything necessarily wrong with our institution? I remember the pride I felt when I was there. I remember the 10,000 students that we used to walk strong on the Baton Rouge campus. What has happened? Well, I'll tell you one of the things that I found very interesting. What LCTCS and the community colleges have done in the last 5 to 10 years, they have completely redesigned, reevaluated the academic program. We are now transitioning when industries come to the state. We stand right next to industry to find out exactly what are your academic needs. So we need to train that workforce So those young men and women can have those what we call high wage, high demand jobs, ready for work. I don't know, and I have not been to Southern University that is campus in a while. But how many hands can show me that we have done a complete academic review where we are aligning our academic offerings to the needs of business and industry and government, because I see my name over here, being held to say I also comes out of the newly invented Nelson Mandela College of Government, so how can we have the needs of government? But when was the last time we sat down and we aligned the academic offerings to the workforce needs of the state? Anybody? It's one of the things that we did at LCDC. LED, the Louisiana Workforce Commission, can come out with what we call the star rating jobs, 4 and 5-star jobs, which typically in layman's language, that equates to high wage, high demand jobs. And that becomes part of our recruitment skills for young men. When the young student comes to us, it's not about whether we can fill out forms. We sell the young person as part of our marketing strategy. Here's how long it's going to take. Here's the pathways, those career pathways that have been developed for you. We have an internship guaranteed for you every single summer you're with us. And we have a job waiting for you at the end of graduation. And it's a pipeline where we talk about from cradle to grave. We're talking about the intake process all the way to placing you in a job. Now, we all know what recently happened with the state budget. A lot of times we say we're state supported. We're no longer state supported. Public post-secondary education in Louisiana is now state assisted. 20% of your state operating dollars come from what? The state general fund, and 80% come from our students. Are we treating our students as paying customers? Because here's how I look at it. Southern University, and I'll use an analogy with a restaurant. Our young people have choices today. They can make a choice. Do I shop in your restaurant or do I go to the restaurant down the street? The question is, like a good restaurant, is the meal of a significant quality? Because you know, like I know, I'll go to a hole in the wall for good meal. Don't tell me about the buildings necessarily not being the best. I understand our buildings may not be the best. What we need to make sure is that our buildings are well maintained. We can't have hot smoke in our buildings. But if our buildings are properly maintained, we don't need the finest buildings. We need the heart and soul of a good restaurant. That is academics. That is show the young person that I can get you in. I know you pay your hard-earned dollars over there and some. And we can transition you straight into that job. Now we set my presentation is up. Quickly run through. God is good. Oh, come on, we can do better. God is good.